Federalist 43, Part 7. We're going to look at the last clause, Clause 9, that Madison looks at. Remember, in this paper, he's looking at the fourth category of powers that have been given to the federal government. And in this paper, he subcategorizes them, breaks them down into 9 pieces. And we're going to look at the 9th one. Before I start reading that, I want to show again that Federalist 42, I showed you one edition of the Federalist Papers by Cambridge University Press. This one is by Yale University Press. It's edited by Ian Shapiro. It has 3 articles attached to it. And the reason I have been showing these different editions is that I think if you read the introductions by different editors, you will benefit somewhat from what that editor's take is on the Federalist Papers. And I'm not showing inside of it because I don't want to violate the copyrights. So, but you can have access to any of them. You can find them online. And in your libraries, you might be able to find them, especially the university libraries. Okay, I'm going to start reading Clause 9 of this Federalist paper. The ratification of the conventions of 9 states shall be sufficient for the establishment of this Constitution between the states ratifying the same. This article speaks for itself. The express authority of the people alone could give due validity to the Constitution. To have required the unanimous ratification of the 13 states would have subjected the essential interests of the whole to the caprice or corruption of a single member. It would have marked a want of foresight in the convention, which our own experience would have rendered inexcusable. So he said, the reason we said that as soon as 9 out of the first 13 states ratify this Constitution, this union will start amongst those 9 states. And the reason we said 9 instead of 13 is because we've had experience this past few years with the Articles of Confederation that we had to have unanimous voting for anything serious to be done, for an amendment to be added, and we learned our lesson. He doesn't mention state of Rhode Island, but that's what he's talking about. He says, we're not going to leave the happiness of majority of this union in the hands of one little tiny state that has over and over blocked us from doing anything worthwhile. Remember, in one of the other previous Federalists, he said, why should we put the happiness of 59/60th of the population in the hands of 1/60th of the population? And then he continues, 2 questions of a very delicate nature present themselves on this occasion. 1, on what principle the Confederation, which stands in the solemn form of a compact among the states, he's talking about the Articles of Confederation, can be superseded without the unanimous consent of the parties to it. 2, what relation is to subsist between the 9 or more states ratifying the Constitution and the remaining few who do not become parties to it? The first question is answered at once by recurring to the absolute necessity of the case, to the great principle of self-preservation, to the transcendent law of nature and of nature's God, which declares that the safety and happiness of a society are the objects at which all political institutions aim and to which all such institutions must be sacrificed. So again, he quotes from the Declaration of Independence. He says, why should the 9 states start this union? He says, because it's common sense. We can't sacrifice the happiness of 9 states or 10 or 11 states because 1 or 2 or 3 states decide not to join. He says that doesn't make sense. That's why we declared our independence, because we thought there are some transcendent laws. There's a law that says people in 9 or 10 states should not sacrifice their happiness and their prosperity because 2 or 3 states don't want to join them. And also he writes, perhaps also an answer may be found without searching beyond the principles of the compact itself. It has been heretofore noted among the defects of the Confederation that in many of the states it had received no higher sanction than a mere legislative ratification. The principle of reciprocality seems to require that its obligation on the other states should be reduced to the same standard. A compact between independent sovereigns founded on acts of legislative authority can pretend to no higher validity than a league or a treaty between the parties. He says another great thing that we've done by asking the 9 states to ratify it, we've just not asked the 9 state legislatures to ratify it. He says that would have made this like a treaty, not a fundamental law, not a constitution. We have asked it to be ratified in special ratifying conventions because we want the people, again, to think about this great object, not the legislatures. So he says that's what's unique about, that is what's going to be unique about this new constitution, is that we have sent it back to the people to decide, not the legislatures. So this is very important for you to think about as you're reading these Federalist Papers. So he says, it is an established doctrine on the subject of treaties that all the articles are mutually conditions of each other, that a breach of any one article is a breach of the whole treaty, and that a breach committed by either of the parties absolves the others, and authorizes them, if they please, to pronounce the compact violated and void, should it unhappily be necessary to appeal to these delicate truths for a justification for dispensing with the consent of particular states to a dissolution of the federal pact. Will not the complaining parties find it a difficult task to answer the multiplied and important infractions with which they may be confronted? The time has been when it was incumbent on us all to veil the ideas which this paragraph exhibits. The scene is now changed, and with it the part which the same motives dictate. So again, if we had sent it to the legislatures to approve, it would have been like a treaty, and as we know, history teaches us that treaties get violated. We've seen it. But he says we want to make something that has more of a sanctity. It's truly a fundamental law when it's ratified by people in special conventions, special ratifying conventions, rather than the state legislatures. And then he continues, the second question is not less delicate, and the flattering prospect of its being merely hypothetical forbids an over-curious discussion of it. It is one of those cases which must be left to provide for itself. In general, it may be observed that although no political relation can subsist between the assenting and dissenting states, yet the moral relations will remain uncancelled. The claims of justice, both on one side and on the other, will be enforced and must be fulfilled. The rights of humanity must in all cases be duly and mutually respected, whilst consideration of a common interest, and above all, the remembrance of endearing scenes which are past, and the anticipation of a speedy triumph over the obstacles to reunion will, it is hoped, not urge in vain moderation on one side and prudence on the other. So as you can see, Madison says that these powers that have been given to the federal government are the right powers. They're actually going to protect you all from invasion, protect you from a small faction taking over the government and making it un-Republican. And all in all, it will be for the best for you. It will lead to your prosperity. It will defend and keep your freedoms secure, and you will also be an example to the rest of mankind.